Okay, so it's been a while since we've done one of these, but we're back to Renew Your Vows issue 12, which ends the Conway Stegman era of the book and moves us on to the next issue. We're moving into the Hauser era. So anyway, so I like the cover. It's nice. It's nicely put together. We which is one of the things that's become a meme about Marvel lately. Nice covers, trash inside. This book doesn't have trash inside, but that's a couple years old now, and they went out of their way to kill it. I've spoken in other videos about this, and I'm going to, in the first Hauser issue, go into details about that, but right now I just think we're needing to get through this. And as I mentioned in another video, I'm trying to change up the way I do reviews, so I'm not going to be reading every panel or everything because I realize that this could be used as a form of piracy, and I just want to talk about the issue in general. I'll still look at individual panels and such, but I'm not going to do the. I'm hoping that this will be a lot less long-winded. I say as I've been babbling on for about the first 90 seconds of the review. Yeah, you have Spider-Man up top doing a classic pose. I tend to think of this as I don't know if Todd McFarlane made this popular, but I tend to think of this pose as a Todd McFarlane pose simply because and this may be memory cheating because I haven't read any of Todd McFarlane's issues in a long time, but I remember as a kid specifically linking it to Todd McFarlane issues. And you have them all, and you have a giant green goblin. So yeah, Curse of the Green Goblin Part Two. This ends the first. This ends like the first. This ends like the first. The first giant plot arc, the first and only giant plot arc of the book, the and yeah, and this may be considered, this the third actual, plot, third mini plot arc. So yeah, Spider-Man's fighting a giant green goblin, and then the X-Men show up, and Spider-Man saves them, and one. Oh, and we have and it looks like we have classic Iceman back, where he's not being a complete jerk to everyone. It's like they decided that they were going to write Iceman. Here's what I think happened. Without getting into too much politics, here's what I think happened. They had a writer who just started writing Iceman as a jerk, so they decided they had writers who were starting to write Iceman as a jerk, so they decided, oh, how can we shield him from criticism since he's one of the original X-Men? Oh, I know, let's turn him gay. Then if you say that he's being a mean-spirited jerk, you hate gay people. But yeah, this looks like classic Iceman back, and yeah, yeah. And here's the thing, even after Spider-Man warns them that this thing is using Regent tech, the stuff that took down the Avengers, and that it takes their superpowers and their mutant powers are only going to make him stronger, the idiots still go after him. Meanwhile, MJ is still with Liz Allen, trying to find out, trying to stop Norman, and she then finds out that Liz Allen doesn't know how to get the Venom symbiote off her. Although again, fire and loud noise have worked in the past. I don't get the impression that Liz Allen knows enough to, or her people know enough to have made any genetic changes to the symbiote. So I don't understand why they can't just use that again. I mean, it worked. I mean, all it took was a church bell for Peter to scare the thing off, and hey, it didn't want to go, so it really didn't want to go. So you would think just getting near this battle would be enough to scare it off, but that's one of the inconsistencies I find normally with the Venom suit. A church bell could scare it off of Peter Parker, but then uh, but then Eddie Brock is able to wear it into places where far louder things are happening, and yet it seems to be just fine. But yeah, and yeah, now we see now we see a cool shot of this giant goblin robot um, just wrecking the city, and it's pretty cool. But it will generate a problem with the story, as I illustrate later. So yeah, now they gave it regenerative abilities, and when they get to Oscorp HQ, they're able to rescue Annie Mae, but then they find Normie, and he has a giant bloody gash on his head. And yeah, th- obviously they didn't want to make a kid irredeemably evil, even though they were pretty much writing him as that up up through last issue. They gave him a bit of humanity in his birthday issue, which I liked, but here's the problem. It feels like they switched villains to me, and the villains' motivation don't make a whole lot of sense. Also, he says he doesn't want to do bad things anymore, so he's not going to get in trouble for any of this, regardless of the fact that he should have killed. He should. There must be hundreds, if not thousands, of people dead because of that giant robot. I'm sorry, but if he's legally able to own a company, then he's legally able to be charged as a criminal. But then they want to fall back on he's just a kid. You can't have it both ways. And this seems to be, again, one of those comic book things that they try to pull. And it's one of those things that I think manga does so much better. Manga never lets you off the hook never lets the characters off the hook for their actions. Just look at something like Full Metal Alchemist, where our heroes are still responsible for their own actions because they knew what they were doing at the time. And it says if they're intelligent enough to join the military, then they're intelligent and talented enough to know that they shouldn't have tampered with things. And yes, we may sympathize with them, but there's still going to be a price that they have to pay in order to in order to fix things. And here the price is gone. So yeah, we find out Miss January is for some reason obsessed with Norman Jr. and I don't know, it comes off as sort of like a creepy pedophile love story thing. And yeah, um so yeah, and I don't get it. If she's doing this because she has some sort of crush on Normie, then why on earth did she bash him in the head bad enough that and leave him there in such a state where he could have easily died? I mean, she could have done major brain damage to him and left him dead. But yeah, Peter absorbs some of the power for the thing, but then he and MJ get blasted, so they've lost their powers, and that gets the symbiote because I guess it killed the symbiote for good finally. But I wouldn't. But yeah, I wouldn't put money on that. But I wouldn't normally put money on that. But being that we're probably never going to see this universe again after its run in the free issue miniseries of Spider Girls, I doubt we'll. I'm just going to say that I think it's done. So yeah, so now Annie Mae has to climb through, and she has to disable the Goblin thing, which for some reason is built like the Death Star, in that it has a giant reactor in it that just blows up, and and it looks like a pumpkin bomb for reasons, and then it blows up, and Miss January again is the only one blamed, and then they pull a Space Jam. Yeah, it's just like the ending of Space Jam. They, Normie gives them a giant ball, and apparently it gives them all their powers back. Which, if you're wondering about that, well, watch the movie Space Jam. Now, I'm not recommending it. Michael Jordan is an awful actor, but But the end of it ends with him giving all the NFL players their stolen powers back just by having them touch a glowing NBA players their powers back by having them touch a giant glowing basketball. Basically, the same thing happens here. Somebody saw Space Jam, and now we cut forward 8 years. I don't know if this was an editorial mandate or if it was the incoming writer Jody Hauser or if it was Ryan Stegman's idea, since he was writing at the time. A lot of people don't like this. I'll go over the pros and cons of it later uh, when I actually do issue 13. And but yeah, we cut forward and now we see Annie Mae getting her own suit and yeah, and we see that she has an interesting. And all of a sudden, her face, she looks like Harley Quinn. That is not a good look on her. I've always believed that my true power wasn't the spider strength or sticking to walls, but the power to shape people's hearts. My name is Annie Mae Parker, and I'm here to save the day. And yeah, I like this as an ending issue. I have a lot of gripes with the logic of the story because it feels all rushed. I feel like this whole thing should have played out over. And yeah, for somebody who's whining about too much about comics taking too long to tell a story, this may sound hypocritical, and who knows, maybe it is. But I feel like it should have been stretched out, or we should have at least seen some consequences for Normie, and then his redemption would feel earned. Here's my thing: redemption without paying some sort of price and accepting your responsibility for your past actions, to me, does not feel like earned redemption, and there's nothing satisfying about it. To me, a truly redeemed character arc, a truly great redemption character arc, is one that ends with a hero, is one that ends with your protagonist or supporting character accepting responsibility and saying, no, I did this, and accepting the consequences of it, and living with the consequences of their actions and doing what they can to make it right in the future. We didn't see any of that, so it didn't feel earned. And yeah, I think that's because of the I think that's because of the I think that's because they ran out of time on this issue. And I'll get into why I think they ran out of time in the next issue, because that's really more relevant there, and I don't want and this review has already gone on long enough. But yeah, it's okay. The art is good for the most part, except for things like Annie Mae's smile there. So yeah, I just have a few niggles with the story, and it feels a little rushed. So I give it a 5.5 out of 10, just barely above average. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this review, and see you next time.